Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel today. Today I want to talk to you about the political spectrum. I was talking to a friend the other day about political labels and what they really mean. I can understand why people are so confused about what certain labels mean. Political ideology can be so confusing, especially when certain groups use a label to mask their true agendas. And then it also gets more confusing that we're taught that politics is just this left-right flat spectrum instead of the two-dimensional spectrum that it really is. And we have so many different charts out there that show like what each political ideology really is. But I decided to bring one more into it. I created my own for the purposes of this discussion. But first off, if you like this content, please make sure you go and subscribe to the channel right now. Click below. That really helps me out. That helps me be able to get more content out to more people. So like and share, and make sure you subscribe. So yeah, let's get to it. I'm going to start on the right side of this chart with anarchy. So a lot of people use the term anarchy pretty much to mean, violence and destruction, because they're so against the state, which the word itself actually does have multiple meanings, and that can be one of them. But when we're talking about political ideology, we are talking about somebody that is simply saying that they like a society, absence of government, with zero political government or zero political structure, full freedom to make choices, full freedom to accept the consequences of those choices, and basically full capitalism. The downside is that there is no governing body to settle crimes against property. So the next, we're going to move to Menarche, which this is where I fall on the political spectrum. Somebody actually wrote, I saw somebody write the other day, Menarche, because stupid people won't let us have anarchy. And to that I responded with, if by stupid people you mean foreign governments, and they said yes, and as well as people that would commit NAP violations or non-aggression principle violations. See, Menarche actually promotes a very small government. Their only role is to protect citizens of that country, and also so they have a standing army to fight. Typically, they also have a court system to settle disputes. And basically, the way that I see it is, without at least these basic necessities, you would have constant foreign invaders trying to establish a government in that country. So I believe you need to have at least the basic protections of a standing army. I do think that a civilian force can fight off foreign invaders, but a standing army actually still provides an outward appearance that we are protected, and it would not be an easy fight if they were to attack. The downside to that is that it's not anarchy, which means it's not full liberty, but it's right there with it. So next on the list, and this is actually the last that falls under the libertarian spectrum of things, classic liberalism, or constitutionalism. The founders of the United States were actually considered classic liberals, which means that they want, it's a belief that the government has a role in creating laws as long as they don't violate the basic human rights. And so a constitution lays it out in specifically in the Bill of Rights, what the government can't violate. It's still a limited scope of government, but it definitely does lead to the possibilities of more authoritarianism, as we've seen over the history of the United States, for example. So now we go above the line, and the first one right there is conservatism. Conservatives believe that government should regulate items based on their value system. Look at LGBT issues, for example. Many conservatives, especially social conservatives, think that the government should regulate based on religious preferences. They also believe that government has a role in regulating commerce, though they tend to be more responsible spending wise when it comes to government spending than the next, as we start getting down the line of what these groups are. Which kind of brings me to centrist Republicans. Centrist Republicans, they tend to support corporatism over capitalism, which corporatism is the government should give money to businesses as long as they agree with your values. They believe in subsidizing certain industries, like we saw in the Farm Bill. There is also a belief that we should be able to make criminal offenses for crimes that don't have a victim. So there is, to an extent, that centrist Republicans believe that the government has a responsibility to protect the people from themselves. And then, obviously, a centrist Republican typically likes a large military force and believes that it's okay to invade other countries if they have wronged you. So now we start to move to what people consider more the left, and it is the modern liberal. This is where it gets really confusing because, like I said, we have classic liberals and modern liberals. Modern liberals and centrist Republicans aren't that far apart. They represent the establishment Republicans and Democrats. They believe in much of the same things, with modern liberals just wanting more regulation and more control, and to provide more. They believe the government should not only subsidize businesses, they also believe that government should subsidize the individuals with things like healthcare. And taking that one step further, you move to progressivism. This is where many of the activist wing in the Democrat Party are at right now. We are seeing progressives, whereas the establishment is still in that modern liberal stage. We are seeing progressives gain more and more momentum when it comes to current politics. Progressives believe that the government should punish those that disagree with them, like free speech laws. They think that we should get rid of free speech laws like we've seen in other countries. They also think that the government should be able to provide them everything. Not full socialism, but like on the cusp of full socialism. They believe in universal health care, social security, all these social programs that we are seeing, but they want more of it. And it's very much like we've seen in other countries, again, with regards to like hate speech laws, universal health care, and the like of that. Now, coming up to the last of the real mainstream, we have Stalinism, or Marxism Part 1. This is the belief in full socialism. Everyone works for the greater good of society. If you disagree, you are either killed or re-educated. So if you're born with a disability that makes you unable to help for the greater good, they also believe in eugenics, so they will kill you, or they will kill a baby if it is not able to provide to the greater good of society. Basically, the idea is that everyone will contribute equally and be provided for equally. It's interesting to see that the people that believe in this think that they would have the right under this system to choose how they're going to contribute to society, right? There's not going to be a such thing as a liberal arts degree. You are going to go into farming. You're going to go into industry. You're going to go into something that provides a basic necessity for the greater good. Basically, get rid of all the arts in music and everything like that you can think of. You have zero choice, and those things don't provide for a greater good of society. In a practical sense. Or they obviously provide to the greater good of society in terms of uplifting our moods and work ethics and making us happier, but a full Stalinist government doesn't care about that stuff. They only care about power, and they only care about making sure that everybody is provided for in that country. But now we move on to the very, 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 very last thing. And this is the biggest misconception about communism. When most people think of communism, they think of that Stalinism that I just described. Um, because that is as far as we have ever gotten in history. That's the furthest that any country has ever gotten, was to Stalinism before it was dismantled. But I labeled this Marxism Part 2, and this is actually full communism because it really is, Marxism's end goal is to have a society that functions for the greater good of society, but without any government. So the way that Marx lays it out in the Communist Manifesto is growing government with full authoritarian control, and then the government basically dismantling itself. Or via force, which is why you see organizations like Antifa already starting to try to get to that point of full socialism, because they don't understand the concept of how Marx wrote it out. They don't really study the Communist Manifesto. They just know that the end state is absence of government, full control, or absence of government. Everybody takes care of everybody. And as you can see, this is actually not far off from anarchy. If you're really looking at it, the only difference is anarchy is full capitalism based on the individual. Communism is absent of government with full socialism based on the collective. So obviously there's a fatal flaw when it comes to communism, because when one person doesn't pull their weight, it means you need an authoritarian figure to make that person pull their weight. Otherwise, the system will never work. If one person doesn't pull their weight, then nobody will pull their weight if there's not an authoritarian figure. And again, it's not likely that a government will ever give up its power. So, which is actually why the people of like Antifa and stuff like that, when they had like their autonomous zone in Portland, one, you had an authoritarian figure that popped up. Two, you could see that they were fawning over the French Revolution and using the guillotine as a symbol of what they would do, which is practically how you would have to get rid of government, because they would never give up the power themselves. You would have to initiate force against the individuals that were leading the country. In order for them to give up that power, they are probably going to have to be killed. And so hopefully these overviews helped you get an idea. Obviously, these are generalizations on topics that have a lot of nuances, but I hope it gives you some sort of idea of what these labels actually mean when people use them, and just builds your knowledge base of what some of these misconceptions are that people have about these certain labels and everything like that. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you go like and subscribe. I am coming back. I have so many amazing guests coming up here in the future, and I look forward to having you guys back. Thanks for visiting.